Let's talk about the safeguards, because you've raised that issue, and we hear this a lot. This bill's got safeguards. It's got safeguards. You don't have to worry. Why are you so concerned about this then?
It's not just the wealthy, the rich, and the privileged who are going to wake up and find themselves eligible for euthanasia and who will have their choice. It's going to be very vulnerable New Zealanders across the country who are terminally ill, who are going to find themselves in very vulnerable, this very vulnerable situation where they might be being denied proper health care, they might not be able to access palliative care, they may not be able to get pharmac funding, they may be a victim of elderly abuse, they might be being manipulated financially or psychologically by their family members, as 90,000 elderly New Zealanders experience at the moment. So we've got a whole list of people who are already going to be in vulnerable situations. And the question is, how does the Act protect those people from a situation such as their family pressuring or manipulating them into requesting euthanasia? This Act puts the whole burden of detecting and making an assessment whether a patient is being pressured or coerced onto one doctor, the first doctor who sees them, who may not even know them, who may not meet them, might only meet them for a couple of times. And then the Act says to that doctor, all you have to do is to do your best to detect pressure in that person. Those are the words. Do your best. It's like a Kiwi euphemistic kind of language. Just do your best, mate, to detect whether this patient is being pressured. And the only way that they can do their best is by talking to the person's usual doctors, which might be themselves. How many GPs do you know everything about a patient's family? Or they can talk to members of the patient's family that the patient allows them to speak to. So if the patient says, no, you can't talk to my family, then they're not going to be able to speak to the patient's family. So invariably, there's going to be problems with that. But there's even a bigger problem with this. And it comes down to the question of how many doctors in New Zealand want to be a part of this process. In the palliative sector, the vast majority of doctors are going to exercise their right of conscientious objection. And in the GP sector, at least half of our doctors, according to polls, are going to exercise their right of conscientious objection. When that happens under the Act, the patient is then transferred across to the SENZ group, the SCENZ group. This is a group of doctors who have put their hands up as being doctors who are willing to help people to end their lives under this Act. So it's going to become a SENZ doctor who will be the doctor who assesses the patient, because their usual doctor has exercised a conscientious objection right. Now, the SENZ doctor will have never met the patient before. Under the Act, the SENZ doctor could even conduct their examinations and consultations with the patient by Skype. And this hapless patient is going to be referred to a doctor who is going to then have to make this assessment about whether a person they've never met and don't know is being pressured. How on earth are they going to do that? Now, the New Zealand Royal College of General Practitioners wrote to the Select Committee during the Select Committee process and said, we are not going to be able to detect coercion in every case. There are going to be wrongful deaths. This is what our own doctors are telling us. Even the court system can't detect whether people are being coerced or pressured. Weeks of hearing and examination and cross-examination, even we can't make up our minds and have a complete foolproof system for detecting it. And yet this Act places the burden on a single doctor who may not have ever met the patient, and said, you just do your best.
So you've said one doctor. The other side would come back and say, but there's two doctors involved. Richard, what does that mean in practice, though?
The test for coercion and pressure is not part of the eligibility assessment. Okay, two doctors under the Act must determine whether the patient is eligible, and sometimes a third doctor if there are concerns about the patient's competence. So what I'm making clear to you is that the test for coercion and pressure is not under the eligibility criteria. The eligibility criteria don't mention it at all. And so It's only the first doctor under Section 11 of the Act who is required to do their best to determine whether there is coercion or pressure in the patient. It's that job does not fall upon the second doctor when the second doctor determines whether the person is eligible or not.